It was February of 2003. I remember being at the airport. My parents were sending me off, not wanting me to go, and here I was, headed to Australia. Basically, I'm the youngest of three, and as the first to leave the country. I had been accepted into a college down there, and I was super stoked to go. They were not so happy for me to go. You see, they thought, you're going to go down there, you're going to meet an Australian girl, you're never going to want to come back, we'll never see your son again, da-da-da-da-da. Well, I headed down the plane, boarded this long flight all the way to Australia, and by the time I got there, got settled in, basically registered for schooling, started my classes, and what you know, I did meet someone. Her name was Jenny. She was studying to be a teacher, and we took an immediate liking to one another. When we got together, everything was exciting, as it is in every new relationship. But basically, things were different. She had a passion to help people, I had a passion to help people, and there was an opportunity that came up during our spring break. We had an opportunity to help with some humanitarian efforts in Papua New Guinea, basically with the earthquakes that have happened down there. Australia is very involved with relief efforts, and selfishly kind of thought, okay, here's an opportunity to help some people, but I can kind of get to know her a little bit too on this journey, and perhaps, you know, it could be a good thing for us. Well, we set out on our journey together, hand in hand, headed to the airport in Australia. We landed in Port Moresby at the Jackson International Airport, Papua New Guinea. The flight was terrible. The airport, obviously, if you ever read about it, it definitely didn't feel like one of the safest, to say the least. And what was worse is we arrived during the rainy season. So it was rainy, stormy. It wasn't a very welcoming experience at all. Fortunately enough, once we gathered our bags, we saw a man holding a sign that had our team's name on it. We were quickly rushed into a van, which we all crammed into, that had no AC, the engine light was on, and we were headed to our location. The drive was long, it was bumpy, and let's just say it wasn't very good. It was very muggy inside. It was even quite frightening. I'll admit, I held Jenny's hand pretty hard. I hadn't been in a country like this, and I wasn't sure what to expect, and she was a little nervous as well. There also wasn't many street lights, so after about an hour or so, we arrived, and it was surprising to see some of the houses down there. They were on stilts, and this particular one seemed pretty dilapidated. I knew that we'd be staying at a place, but I didn't know it'd be this run down. It was really stormy outside. Even some of the window shutters were banging, you know, barely hanging on. It looked like something kind of out of a horror movie. But the whole team was exhausted. We were ready for bed. We all headed. Girls had to sleep in one end of the house. Boys had to sleep in the other. Or whatever. We were exhausted. Let's just go to bed. The next day, after all the rain that had happened, none of us got much sleep. But reluctantly, I was excited. I went over to check on Jenny. I wanted to get her up, you know, where our team was already waiting out at the van. We were just waiting on her. You know, we were going to go help with some home restoration projects today. And she's still in bed. And worse is she was covered in sweat. She looked pretty sick. She looked very pale. Just not in good shape. She told me she's going to stay in the day and hopefully recover, as she didn't have a great sleep. I held her hand and said I'd mentioned to Jeff, our team leader, that I'd see if I could stay back to help her. Well, I went and spoke with Jeff, mentioned to him that Jenny wasn't feeling very well, and asked him if I could stay back. He had a puzzled, almost frustrated look on his face, like, come on, you're holding up the team. Let's go. We got to go. You know, it was almost like he wasn't even hearing me. And he just said, don't worry. Everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. And he motioned to me to get on the bus. So got on the bus. I thought, okay, I'm sure she's going to be okay. She just didn't have a great sleep. It's very hot and muggy out there. So I thought everything would be okay. Basically, we arrived back late that afternoon. You know, it must have been around 4 or 5 o'clock. I rushed in to go check on Jenny. And what was worse is she wasn't in her room. I ran everywhere around the house. I ran everywhere around the property. She was nowhere to be found. Panic quickly set in. I went to the caretaker. What happened to her? What happened to Jenny? They couldn't understand me. I don't know. Maybe she's in the hospital. What if she got worse? I rushed to Jeff almost in hysterics. Jeff, Jenny is gone. She isn't here. We gotta find her. Come, talk to the caretaker. We need to find her. He looked at me like stone cold and, Jenny? I said, yes, almost angrily. Jenny! He looked at me with almost, like a deer looking at oncoming headlights. Just shocked. And I was starting to get frustrated here, more panicked. He said, you gotta sit down. You gotta sit down. And he told me to calm down. I thought maybe he knows what's going on. At this point, he almost had a tearful expression on his face. Jenny's dead. What? He said it again. Jenny's dead. She died 2 weeks earlier before the trip. You went to her funeral. I dropped to my knees. I began sobbing. What was I seeing? Feeling? I felt lost. I felt scared. She was here. I seen her. She got on the plane with me. We held hands on the bus. We spoke this morning before I left. She was sick, but she was going to get better. I sat and cried on the grass. I couldn't believe this. Suddenly, it all started coming back. I started to think deeper and deeper. Turns out Jeff was right. She had died 2 weeks prior to the trip. You see, Jenny was terminally ill. I spent time with her at the hospital during her last days and was even at the funeral. It all came back now. I remember committing to going on the trip because she would have wanted it that way. But I thought, and I knew for sure, what I felt, what I saw, what I smelt, I knew that was Jenny. I knew she was with me. Looking back, it seemed somewhat chilling, but almost somewhat comforting. You see, sometimes the toughest part about losing someone is thinking they are still here.
Make sure if you liked our video, please press the like button, and if you'd like to hear more chilling stories from the void, press the subscribe button.